Hello everybody, it's Mr Veale here, and of course you'll probably know this already, but I'm the head teacher of Atwood Primary Academy, which is situated in Sanderstead in South Croydon. Now, in this special edition of our vlogs, what I wanted to do was just go through our initial thoughts as a senior leadership team and as a school about the government announcements that the plan is that all children are going to be coming back to schools in England from the 1st of September. Now, earlier in the week, we knew that the announcement was going to be made, and quite rarely some of the details were leaked, I think, and it gave head teachers, senior leaders a good opportunity to understand what might be coming out in the guidance, but also pretty much we were quite surprised, but we had a 33-page document from the government ahead of the ministerial statement in the House of Commons, which was quite rare. So normally it's the statement followed by the guidance. So it's quite detailed, and I'm not going to be able to give you every single detail about what's going to be happening from September. But I thought it would be really useful just to give you a flavour of what's in the document and just give you some of our initial thoughts and feelings about how we're going to arrange things for your children coming back in September. We've probably, as you know, we've got 2 more weeks left of the summer term, and so my feeling is over the next week or so, we will be doing a lot of planning and a lot of communicating with you about how we're going to make all of this work and happen, because then we've got the lovely 6-week summer vacation, and we don't really want to be communicating with you during the summer holidays. We think that we deserve a rest and you deserve a rest. So my promise to you is that we'll try and get everything out to you before we break up on the 17th of July. So without further ado, I hope you don't mind, but if I'm not looking directly at the camera, it's because I'm looking at the document. So essentially, the government are asking all schools to prepare for pupils to return full-time from the start of the autumn term. So by the looks of it, obviously we must comply as a school to health and safety guidance, and we need to obviously relook at our risk assessment that we put in place earlier this year and make sure that we've got proportionate control measures. So essentially, the protective measures about any child coming back into school, and indeed all children coming back, is that we need to be very clear with families that there is a requirement that people who are ill stay at home, and that includes our own staff. We must make sure that we've got robust hand and respiratory hygiene in place, and we must ensure that we've got enhanced cleaning arrangements here at Atwood, and we must engage as a whole school community with the NHS test and trace, and we need to really think about some formal considerations of how to reduce contacts and maximise distancing between those in school wherever possible, and to minimise potential for contamination so far as is reasonably practicable. And so this is the first thing, really. We've noticed that the government has reduced the social distancing from 2 metres to, I think, 1 metre plus, but also we do recognise that our youngest children, by their very nature, cannot socially distance, and so we've just got to do everything we can as possible. Now, the government expects us to look at some of those control measures by how we're grouping the children together, and how we're avoiding contact between those groups, and how we're arranging classrooms. And now the government are suggesting forward-facing desks. So children sitting in rows and not engaging in too many activities that involve group work in class. And of course, staff maintaining distance from pupils and other staff as much as possible. So that's the broad brushstrokes on this. I've mentioned before that we would need to look at our risk assessment, and let's have a look here. So in terms of systems of control, as a school, we need to really concentrate on prevention. So we are going to do a lot of education around hand cleaning, good respiratory hygiene. The children already know this, but the catch it, bin it, kill it approach. And we need to think about how our staff, protect themselves by wearing PPE when dealing with any incidents with children that require that. So that's probably mainly toileting incidents and first aid incidents. And then in terms of the response to infection, I need to make it very clear to you that any children or adults displaying symptoms of COVID must not come into school, and they must book themselves for a test and follow all of those procedures in terms of what comes out of that in terms of self-isolation. And I won't go into too many details about that, but that information is readily available. Other things, just looking through the documents, let's have a quick look down here. Yes, enhanced cleaning and frequency of touch surfaces. So as a school, we need to make sure that not only rooms, shared areas, but frequently touched surfaces are cleaned more than normal. We don't need to allocate different groups of children their own toilet blocks, but of course toilets will need to be cleaned regularly, and pupils must be encouraged to clean their hands thoroughly after using the toilet. So one thing from me as head teacher, please can you work with your children, no matter what age they are, and encourage really good hand sanitization after using the toilet. So that becomes the absolute norm for them. Now let's scroll through the document. Let's have a look. Okay, so minimizing contact between individuals and groups of children. We've got to really look at that to reduce the transmission of coronavirus. So we need to think about them in bubbles, but of course larger bubbles this time. And the guidance is quite clear that actually staff can cross between the bubbles. So for example, peripatetic music staff or what we call PPA teachers can cross the bubbles and teach different groups of children. The watchword here is that although it's difficult for children to do social distancing, the staff are expected to, as much as practically possible, maintain a 2-meter distance between each other and the children. We've got to really think carefully about lunch times and play times and so on. Things like assemblies, they will have to be done virtually from computers into classrooms because we can't have too many people in particular areas. So this is obviously going to throw up a lot of logistical planning. And we are also looking at adapting, as we have done previously. In the guidance it says measures for arriving at and leaving school. So we are going to have to think about staggered starts and staggered ends, and we are going to have to think about entrance and exits for that. And the name of the game really for schools here is to reduce the amount of parents on site at any one time. And so just briefly, we feel that our Key Stage 2 children most likely will need to be said goodbye to at the gate and then them come in independently, not with parents. But obviously our younger children, as appropriate, coming in with just one parent, cutting down the amount of siblings coming on site. And again, there will be no access to the office staff. We're very much used to that now. And also just I know it's so lovely to chat, and I'm the biggest chatter on the gate, but it's not congregating and going as quick as possible about our everyday business. So just looking forward to things like equipment. The government recognises that equipment and resources are integral to education in schools. And so we did minimise the use of equipment in the summer term. You don't need to know, but we put a lot of our equipment in shared areas and locked it away to reduce the burden on cleaning. But obviously, with all children coming back, we are going to have to think very carefully about what equipment we use. Obviously, things like bags can come back into school. We need to make sure that we're cleaning any touch surfaces, any sports and art equipment, science equipment, thoroughly cleaned between usages. Outdoor play equipment needs to be more frequently cleaned, etc. So lots to be taken on board there. Things like music, we're such a musical school, I need to think very carefully about how we can safely get back to, if we can at all, using musical instruments and making sure that they're cleaned down between usages and so on. So lots to think about, as you will understand, I'm sure. I'm just scrolling down through the document. It deals with what happens if there is an outbreak, what schools have to do, what parents have to do, and it talks a little bit about staggered starts and so on. And then it gets into some meatier information about the requirement, let's say, for parents to send their children into school. And so we understand that a small minority of families may still be anxious about sending their children into school, but my understanding is that the expectation is that you will have to send your children into school, and the normal registration process will happen, and therefore the extension of that is schools obviously have powers to work alongside the educational welfare officer to support good attendance. And don't forget, Atwood's attendance target is always 97%. So I'm sure you will support us on that. Now it goes on to say things like, let's have a quick look. Uniform, there's very much getting back into the flow of things. The government feel that appropriate use of uniform is right and proper and contributes to a good ethos in a school. And so the expectation from September is that the children will be in their normal school uniform. And we need to promote that, of course. Now, in terms of extracurricular provision, most likely, certainly for the autumn term, there probably won't be any clubs. I need to make some decisions around breakfast and after school care, and I just wanted to alert families to this, that please don't rely on these provisions around wraparound care for work. It's just that the logistics of running breakfast club and after school club are not clear at the moment, and I would hate for anyone to think that these provisions can be relied upon and be disappointed later with other announcements from the school. So let's, I suppose, just assume that they're not going to be run. So please assume that breakfast club won't be run, after school club won't be run, and clubs won't be run. If we can move on that later in the autumn term, then obviously we will, but I just wanted to be very clear on that. The government also are keen in their section 3 to look at curriculum, behaviour and pastoral support. So the curriculum expectations, once again, is that schools need to offer a broad and ambitious and balanced curriculum. They would like us to start up on the national testing programme again. There's a few tweaks towards that. And the aim is to return to the school's normal curriculum in all subjects by summer 2021. And so hopefully it will be business as normal. We have, as a staff, done a lot of work about planning what we're calling a recovery curriculum, and when we come back in September there will be a couple of days of general settling in, and then we're going to launch ourselves into a wonderful special project called Atwood at 60. And so That will be an immersive project which will be done in classes and in year groups, really celebrating Atwood at 60, but having a look at a range of different cultural and artistic and musical influences that Great Britain has faced since the 1960s. So that's going to be really good. And then that's going to hopefully settle the children into their learning, and then we'll pick up more formal learning mid-September. Now let's have a look. I think I'm just scrolling through physical activity in schools. That is absolutely a must, and we need to really promote physical activity, and we are trying, if we can, the government wants us to prioritise outdoor sports, weather depending. So I've asked Mrs Bayliss and the team to introduce the daily mile for years 1 through to 6, so to get those children physically fit as well as mentally fit and academically fit. So they're going to need their PE kits and so on. There's a lot about catch-up support. We know that the government announced a £1 billion package to ensure that schools have the resources they need to help the pupils make up for lost teaching time with extra support who need it most. And so as a senior leadership team, we will be looking at how we can support pupils. Obviously, lots of caveats here. The government are wanting us to focus on our disadvantaged pupils first, most likely our SEND pupils, and then we will look at those children who need more catch-up, or and put in packages that we can support the children. So that's an important aspect. And then there's this whole section around pupil well-being and support. Obviously, lots of different children across the country have had a variety of different experiences of lockdown. They've experienced a variety of different emotions in response to COVID-19, and so we feel that anxiety and stress may be more prevalent, and so we will be adapting our curriculum to do more of a talking-based curriculum, circle-based curriculum, mindfulness curriculum, so that the children have a good opportunity to express their thoughts and feelings. Government want the normal behaviour expectations for schools to return, and so following the behaviour policy, but that's not an issue at Atwood. And let's have a look. Just looking through, I think I've mentioned about primary assessment. So by the looks of it, the phonics screening check is back on. Key Stage 1 tests and teacher assessments are back on. Year 4 multiplication tables check, that was due this year. Obviously we couldn't do that, so that will be back onto the programme for next. Key Stage 2 tests and teacher assessments, and some statutory trialling, most likely of science, but that's on a kind of invitation basis for schools. Now let's have a quick look here, just having a look through the document. I don't think there's anything more really to bring to your attention. So essentially, in summary, I know it's been a real canter through this document. It is going to be the fact that senior leadership team will start planning the risk assessment for all children to return in September. Please do expect that there will be restricted access onto our site for adults, because adults most likely have the greatest opportunity to transmit the virus, and we want to mitigate that. Please be aware that we will be having staggered starts and staggered finishes. Please also be aware that we may, I should say, keep going with the one-way systems. We will look at seeing how we can employ the Tandridge Gate entrance and exit, but please do not kind of have negative thoughts about why can't I use that gate, I live closer and so on. I think we've all got to do our bit, really. We know that. We've obviously got to make sure, like I said, about good hand hygiene, respiratory health, and we've all got to really think and engage in coming on site. Well, we mustn't come on site if we're showing any of the symptoms, and we must engage with the track and trace and work alongside the authorities to do with reporting of any incidents. So I'm hoping this is useful to you, and please do look out for further information as we get it. I will communicate in the usual ways, and thank you for your time.